So hi everyone. Uh, Sorry. So yeah, my name is Sultan Ahmed, and here we have gathered today. I would like to share my journey as to how I become a front-end developer from a software professional over the years, and what are some factors that contributed to it, and we'll also look into some reasons as to why you could become a front-end developer, and some challenges that you might be facing, and we'll try to get ourselves come up with techniques as to how to handle them. So beginning, let's start our journey. A little about me, as you all must have been aware, my name is Sultan Ahmed Shaik. My education is, I did my bachelor's from BITS Pilani, which is an institute based in India. It had a course called Information Systems, which was like an amalgamation of computer science and management courses. We'll get into how that helps, over the years. And and then I understood the importance and the potential of being in the computer science field. So when I had the chance of doing my master's, I did it in from University of Cincinnati. And here's my major tech stack, which is I specialize in React.js, Next.js. We'll get into as to which framework should you be picking and which frameworks to avoid, so on. So I picked React.js. I'll get into the reasons in a while. And then in CSS3, I basically work on the CSS frameworks SAS and less. And then finally, for bundling, I use Webpack. And yeah, this is my tech stack for specialization. And then moving on, first, let's start with this course structure. Anybody who is going to college or trying to get into the software field through their computer science branch, they must know that these are the courses that a computer science student goes through with. It's operating systems, data structures and algorithms, computational theory, microprocessors, computer networks, principles of programming language, computer architecture, and database systems. While this is the whole list of the basic core disciplinary courses that a computer science graduate goes through, but to get into the software field, all you need is basically these two courses. Again, don't get me wrong. Operating systems and the remaining courses are important, but they do not come into play until you are into a specialization aspect. For example, like operating systems comes into play where if you have chosen to become a systems admin. Computational theory, principle of programming languages comes into more of a research oriented, where you are trying to optimize the very basic structure of languages, how C, C++, how they operate. Microprocessors, computer networks, all those come into play if, let's say, if you're working for a company which specializes in computer hardware. But I mean, I'm not aware of any company that allows a software engineer to get in without these two courses. And there's a reason that there are 2 stars for data structures and algorithms. It would be impossible to find a software engineer who's not able to solve a problem using data structures and algorithms. Database systems, there's still an excuse if you are not very good at it, but database systems but data structures and algorithms are a must know. And like I mentioned, these 2 courses were part of my course stream at BITS, which was information systems. There are similar courses here in the US. These 2 courses would lay the foundation, which would help you to interact at work. For example, at Principles of Management, you would understand what a stakeholder is, how a private equity firms, how a public equity firms, what is meant by a culture of a company, what companies have tried and failed, so on. You would learn at Principles of Management. There would be similarly named courses at your own universities. I suggest you take them as part of electives. Similarly, Principles of Economics would let you to understand what's a sunken cost, how what's the difference between demand and supply, and all these would help you navigate, because as a front-end developer, you would be working very closely with business users, with creative designers, so on. You would be directly influencing customer behavior and usage. So some of the reasons to become a front-end developer, yeah. So it would be you have instant feedback and result. So, I mean, if you're working on the back end or any other technology like a systems admin or anything, you wouldn't have, I mean, you would have to basically go through, spend some time solving the whole problem. And at the end of it, you just see that it works. Whereas, in the front-end development, as soon as you add a button, as soon as you change the color of something, you can simply run your code and you would see the result of it instantly. Second thing is influencing user experience. I cannot stress this enough, but as a front-end developer, you would be the one representing the company or the firms or even like your own brand to the world. It's one thing like let's take the example of our social media websites. Let's take the example of our streaming services. There is a difference, even though their content might be really good, they might be showing really good movies, but unless you really enjoy playing around with their user interface, using their applications and all that, you would not be returning to that platform again and again. So this just take the example of using an iPhone versus using any other version of a phone. iPhone users have a hard time going back to using the previous non-app iPhone versions of phones, because their user experience is on a different level and customers get addicted to it, and they have a faithful customer base for that reason. And yeah, finally, I guess important enough, there's good demand for the skilled labor. It's not something that can be undervalued, because you will be directly influencing the firm's face to the world. So if you are skilled enough, and we'll get back to as to how easy it is to get into the front-end development. But if you are really skilled, there's good money and you could be swimming in it. So let's get into the roadmap for this is from a perspective of purely freshers who want to get into front-end development. So as a novice, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is what you will be concentrating on. You need to get your fundamentals right. We'll get into as to why this is the case. HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, it's been like 3 decades since the dot-com bubble started. Since the dot-com explosion, but the browsers have not updated. When I say they have not updated, they are still understand only 3 things, which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So it's important for you to understand these fundamentally, and then you would move on to other advancements, which is framework, which basically presents a sugar version of the same concepts. So like I mentioned, you have to spend enough time concentrating on these, get your fundamentals right, and only then move on to the next level, which is picking up a framework and working on it. So once you are skillful enough with these 3 concepts, you would move on to a framework for the JavaScript, the styling, and so on and so forth. So when it comes to frameworks, it's easy for all of you to get overwhelmed and start learning all the frameworks at once. Just pick one framework, whether Angular, Vue, and React. These are like the most popular ones. So I've picked up these 3. Just pick one framework and stick to it until you have gained enough specialization in that, so that you can accommodate other frameworks. Similar thing with Sass and Less. These are just, like I mentioned, syntactic sugar. Or when I say syntactic sugar, it's just a beautiful way of writing the same code. Ultimately, all this code is compiled and not compiled. It's basically transpiled and put into HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And finally, there's TypeScript, which is an efficient way of writing JavaScript for developers. It's again purely from a developer's perspective. Moving on, once you are experienced enough, you have handled a framework, you're comfortable with frameworks for styling, you're comfortable with frameworks for JavaScript, so on and so forth, you would be moving on to using advanced frameworks like GraphQL, which comes into play after you're able to make a call and comfortably make a call to the server, fetch the responses, and render them on the screen. Webpack bundling comes, like I mentioned, all these frameworks, they are transpiled and put into HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So efficient way of doing that is done by Webpack. And once you are skillful enough, you will be moving on to the experience path where you will be dabbling with Webpack, Gulp, and there are other alternatives. This is just the most popular one. There is this, my personal path in which I learned C and Java first before I moved on to the front-end development. So I'll give you a few reasons as to why I think I was at an advantage due to this. And this is purely on your personal reference. I would recommend this path. Here are a few reasons for that. In a strongly typed language, you know what you have written, and that is how it is. There isn't much scope for changing it on the fly. Here it's a strongly typed example, where someone is trying to add a string to a number. In Java, this would throw up an error. So this gets you accustomed to writing, it is what you call syntactically correct code. Whereas in JavaScript, you can simply add 2 to 2 and it becomes 22. It's a string, which is an alphabet 2 equal plus a number 2, and it basically becomes a number 22. So a cat is a cat and a lion is a lion. That's how it is in strongly typed languages. Whereas JavaScript, you can change a string to a number and then a number to again decimal or anything. Finally, error checking. Like in JavaScript, you can have variables declared and you can use them, although they will come up as undefined. But in Java and all that, it wouldn't allow you to run your code if it sees that you are using a variable that has not been declared previously, which helps you again to write error-free code, which allows you to rely on the compiler to catch your errors and correct you with immediate feedback. Finally, the third point is object-oriented programming. So JavaScript try to capitalize on Java's popularity. That hence the name JavaScript. They are not even related, or they're the same company. However, object-oriented programming is very similar. Java has a more strict convention towards it's a class-based language. So, for example, if you have a human, you declare it as type a class as human. You would have some attributes like name, age, so on, personal attributes. Then an object would be I am an object of class human. And then there are methods like, I walk, I send email, or, I talk to people, so on. So this is like an object-oriented, this paradigm would help you make, acclimatize JavaScript easily. However, I don't stress yourself too much over it. It's understandable if you don't get all that information at once. What I mean to say is that basically you would be able to, if you are allowed to play with stricter rules, you can play with relaxed rules very easily. That's the whole point of through this path. And this is the most important aspect, which is the last aspect of coding in Java. You will have to solve interview questions in and algorithms in Java. In data structures, and Java has there are a bunch of data structures available at its disposal, like stacks, queues, graphs, trees. All these are available in Java ready-made. You can simply use them. So if there is a priority queue question, you can simply use it in Java. Whereas for JavaScript, you'll have to create a structure, and that wastes time, that causes unnecessary stress. So this is one reason that even today, unless the interviewer emphasizes that I use JavaScript, I prefer using Java for data structures. So yeah, my interview preparation, I have had basically I would like to give credit to my mentor. His name is Madasar Ali. He is he says he's a full-time software engineer, but I think he's a full-time photographer and a part-time software engineer. You can follow him on Instagram, and you can follow his GitHub repo. He has pretty good, code bases in JavaScript. And it was he who told me the way to navigate the world of JavaScript, because since it's easy to get into the front-end development, there is a whole library of tutorials and all that, and it's very easy to find yourself lost. And these are my study resources, which is freeCodeCamp and CSS Tricks. We'll get into how I use them, navigated them easily. So it was my mentor who emphasized the importance of learning HTML, CSS, JavaScript thoroughly and creating projects in it before I move on to any framework. If had it not been for that advice, I would have probably been lost in just coding in React.js and not being able to accommodate any other change in data structure or upgrading of library. So let's as an introduction, like I mentioned, browser is pretty dumb. After 3 decades, it understands only 3 things, which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So what is HTML? HTML is just the foundation, what you would have for a building. It doesn't have any paint to it. It doesn't have any look, functionality, nothing. It's just the foundation. So you'll have the structure like heading, the heading, this article, this section, the paragraph, and so on. All that is written in HTML, whereas the font, the styling, the color, and everything is done with the help of Java, with the help of CSS. And finally, when you have the styling, the look and feel of it, then you need functionality. Like just as a house needs electricity and fan, and smart houses have furthermore functionality, that's where JavaScript comes in. So in a very simple example, like a button, just a button existing is HTML, a button following a certain font pattern, a color, all that comes under CSS. And then what happens when you click that button? That comes under JavaScript. Till date, browser understands only these three things. You would have to code these things in an efficient manner using frameworks once you are very comfortable with these fundamentals. So let's get started. I'll just give you a couple of tutorials, resources to navigate through. I mentioned freeCodeCamp, but freeCodeCamp is very overwhelming. I mean, they have at least, I think, 20 modules. You don't need all that. You don't need all of those to get into front-end development, nor do you need all of the front-end developer certification that they offer. These are the modules that I suggest you cover, and then you should be in a good position to start, which is like the responsive web design modules. They should prepare you with basics of HTML and CSS. And then we'll move on to the JavaScript modules. You could skip the modules in between. So first, then comes basic JavaScript. If you have absolutely no background in JavaScript, that's where these come in. And then you have ES6, which is like a more better version of writing the same JavaScript, the upgraded version of JavaScript. Then comes debugging, like how would you identify errors in your program? All of this is taught at freeCodeCamp with an interactive challenge editor, in which you just have to add a couple of lines in order to see the result. So that makes it very interactive, and it's very beginner friendly. So that's the reason I recommend freeCodeCamp. Then you would finish the module on functional programming, and then finally we'll move on to front-end libraries. There are other modules in between these, but you can safely skip those, and you can come back to them once you have, once you are comfortable enough to playing around with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So front-end libraries, the first one would be Bootstrap, which is an advanced version of using CSS modules. Then comes Sass, which is, like I said, a different way of writing CSS. jQuery, which is a JavaScript library. Then React.js, followed with Redux. All of these can be finished in a few days. It might take you 2 to 3 days, but it will get you started. These are the only modules, according to me, that you need. These are the only modules that I have done. It's important that don't get caught in completing the projects which they have suggested. It's possible you might never reach that perfection that they have presented, but complete the challenges. The challenges are the interactive part where all you have to do is just edit a couple of lines, and then you see your result. So then moving on to CSS tricks. You will have a complete guide to Flexbox. This is on CSS tricks. This is like the Bible for Flexbox. You also have other places where you have Flexbox guide, but this is which is suggested by everybody. This is what even senior developers go to if they need a reference in Flexbox, which will help you to arrange objects on the HTML on the web page. Similarly, the CSS grid, instead of using tables in HTML, nobody uses tables these days unless they're explicitly asking for tables. For arrangement of objects, they are using CSS grid, and again, you'll have a reference to that on CSS tricks. Then there's the position attribute, which allows you to position your objects relative to other objects or in absolute position, in the middle or anything. And finally, CSS selectors, like how do you select a particular object from the HTML web page. These 4 should be enough for you to get started on your vanilla, on your CSS, on your basic JavaScript projects. Don't buy a CSS mastery book and get confused with it. It's a lot of stuff. You'll get overwhelmed. You might probably be demotivated, and you might give up. So moving on, you should start with creating simple projects in HTML in the basic structure I've mentioned. We'll call it the 3 musketeers. So start with the three musketeers and create these projects. You can, I mean, there's this calculator and clock. At first, this might seem a bit intimidating that you have to create a clock which is very animated, but I'll break it down to you, and this is the approach that you must be following. So, like you have the clock.js example. I mean, first you have to identify like how do you draw a circle. Like a clock is basically a circle, and inside of that there are animated hands. So how do you draw a circle? A simple way to do that is to simply create a div, give it a border, with a certain height and width, and make the border radius 100%. Sorry, 50%. That will make a circle. So you have a circle, and then you have to draw straight lines. And with these straight lines, the way to do that is simply make their width 0 and their height at a certain length, for hours, seconds, and minutes. And then you have to position those hands inside of the circle. So how do you do that? You will do that with using the position attribute, which I've mentioned. You can refer to the CSS tricks, and you're good to go. Finally, here's where JavaScript comes in, which is the animation part of it, where you apply the rotation on each hand, depending on the time, depending on the zone that you are in. So yeah, that's it. I mean, instead of like looking at it as a clock, you break it down into smaller components, and that's how you solve it. So it's just like, they say, like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Do not feel shy to use the online tools available. You have Stackblitz, you have Code Sandbox for the advanced frameworks. For simple HTML, the three musketeer, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, you have the CodePen.io. CodePen.io is very simple for these three, but if you're using React.js and Next.js or anything like that, it is possible to do it in CodePen, although it's a bit more complicated setup. You might face a bit of difficulty using it. But nevertheless, you can start with CodePen, see your code in action, and then move on to Stackblitz and Code Sandbox as you advance in level. Then we'll move on to interview preparation. This is a very important video. It's at a JS conference by Philip Roberts. It's called the event loop. What the heck is the event loop anyway? This would be your best 25 minutes that you would be investing in your journey towards a front-end developer. I can easily vouch that you would have like 50% of your interview questions just if you are able to absorb the concepts in this video. Because JavaScript is single-threaded, so you have to understand as to how JavaScript plays around with server responses while it is waiting for a response from the server, or while you're waiting for some other dependency. So that's where event loop comes in, and that's this video would guide you with that. And then moving on, the W3 schools are for beginners, like absolute beginners. As developers, you should be using, as a front-end developer, you should be using Mozilla Document Network. That would be like your go-to tool in order, if you want to know anything in particular, if you're looking for documentation, if you're looking for reference, you have to go to Mozilla Document Network. And after you have done the challenges from freeCodeCamp for React and Redux, you can basically go to the official React.js docs, and you have a basic tutorial there. Refer to those documents. Begin that tutorial, complete it end to end. It's a very simple tic-tac-toe tutorial. That should be enough for you. This should be enough for you to move on in depth into React.js. So understand one thing, these companies are also treating us as customers, so it's important for them to sell us their ideas. So always when you're picking up a new technology, as a rule of thumb, always look at their release event. They will be able to present you as to exactly why they have come up with that idea. If you look at Redux, Dan Abramov's Redux release event, or the State Hooks release event, you would be able to exactly understand as to what is the purpose of them. They're adding this feature to React, to Redux, so on and so forth. Here are a few advanced concepts, which will come into play once you have created a few small projects in JavaScript. I would say at least let's say a dozen projects in JavaScript. You move on to event emitters and listeners. This is how you interact between your component and other components on the page. Then there's promises, which is used for I mean, it's called asynchronous, which means basically like, while you are waiting for a response from the server, you are waiting for some other dependency. That's where promises come in. I would not go into detail since like, I assume most of you are beginners. But yeah, these concepts is what you'll have to revisit. And then there's prototypal inheritance. It is basically a structure, a sharing between objects. For example, like a human can walk and so can a dog. So like you'll be basically sharing attributes between those two. Finally, you will have scopes and closures, which is, like I mentioned, JavaScript is a weakly typed language. So you have to understand as to how scope works, how a particular variables reacts once the function has ended, and whether it still has access to the values that it previously held. All these, like these are some keywords which you can refer to. I'll be sharing this presentation so you can revisit it again. And yeah, I mean, all this effort, after that, you think you would know JavaScript, but then I would refer you to this. Like, I mean, and please, do not begin from this book. It's called the You Don't Know JavaScript by Kyle Simpson. It's called the Bible of JavaScript. It's freely available if you are looking for a PDF version. If you're looking for a hard copy, you can get it on Amazon. But yeah, please avoid these books unless you are confident enough to explore JavaScript in detail. Because it's very simple. It's a bit overwhelming, and I'm not sure if even experienced engineers have finished this book cover to cover. But yeah, I mean, this would finish your specialization in JavaScript, and you would be able to take a framework, any framework, head on. But yeah, please get back to these books after you have gained decent knowledge in a framework via the framework after completing the previous concepts. Here are some best practices that I would suggest. One is a thorough understanding of JavaScript. Everything is JavaScript. Like there are more frameworks of JavaScript than probably humans. I mean, okay, that's an exaggeration, but there are you can basically throw any word in the internet and you'll find a framework of JavaScript with that name, like Dino.js or Dino.js or Patience.js or anything like that. You would definitely be able to find a framework of JavaScript. So it's important for you to keep a thorough understanding of JavaScript before you move on to a framework. Chrome is your friend, and Internet Explorer is not your friend. I mean, it should be your last preference to learn web development on Internet Explorer, but use Chrome to its full. Get handy with Chrome DevTools. You'll be able to debug sessions easily. You'll be able to handle you'll be able to handle debug issues. You'll be able to handle network issues. Anything that you are facing in your web page, you would be able to see it on the console. So it's use it to your full use. Use it to its full leverage, and I think you can easily get success that way. Yeah, I mean, there are, like I mentioned, there are multiple frameworks. So yeah, please just pick one framework, whether it's React, Angular, Vue, it doesn't matter. Pick one and just stick to it. Stick to it unless you have gained enough specialization in that framework and you would like to move on to other frameworks. Avoid tutorial hell. There's no point in buying Udemy courses, Egghead courses, or Educative or anything courses in the initial stages, because all these courses are they're very long. It's quite possible you might get demotivated. It's possible that you are following through and you might face a problem that person has not addressed, and you would get stuck, give up. And yeah, please start with small projects. Start with small, simple projects that you can complete within a few hours, and that should put you on the path to success. And then refer to CSS Tricks website for any CSS any CSS related information. That would be your go-to website for Flexbox, Grid, so on and so forth. And so do not aim for perfection in the beginning. If you're trying to clone a page, if you're trying to clone any user experience, please don't try to get it perfect. I mean, basically, it's okay to not have a perfect solution in the beginning. It would take you several times of practice before you are able to perfectly replicate what is shown as the user. So what is shown as the user experience. So for freeCodeCamp projects, complete the challenges, but for projects, it's totally fine if you're not able to. I mean, if you're able to get in 60% of the functionality, I would say it's passing marks. And yeah, complete the challenges 100%. I'm drawing a distinction between the project that they have suggested versus the challenges in which are basically like 2 or 3 line code changes. Avoid Webpack and other bundlers. Like I mentioned, there are already tools available. And these tools are like StatBlitz Code Sandbox, which will allow you to simply execute your code, see the results, and move on without getting into how bundling takes place, how JavaScript, HTML work together, and all that. Don't get into that as a beginner. Please get into it after after you have gained enough experience in the industry. Here are some interview tips. Problem-solving skills are given preference over technology. So if you are able to solve a problem using data structures or algorithms, or using basic JavaScript, those people are preferred over people who have, let's say, worked on 7 different frameworks. And the front-end challenges, as a rule, usually are by default in JavaScript. It doesn't matter what company you're interviewing for. Front-end challenges are always in JavaScript. There are a few exceptions like startups. I would like to put forward this point that startups would like to save on employee training. And when they're trying to save on employee training, they would try to get a person who is already knowledgeable in the framework or technology that they are using. So they might want to interview on that, but all the companies which can afford, giving some onboarding time to their employees, they would interview you in JavaScript. And they would ask you to solve challenges in JavaScript. So all that clocks and all that should be decent enough to be done in 45 minutes, a basic functionality. Yeah, learn to refer official docs. All these interviews, they'll be open book. You would be allowed to refer anywhere, any website, but that doesn't mean you will be allowed to refer any website. You would not be allowed to go into some tutorial or just pick up some random code from GitHub. You would be allowed to go to an official document. So going to, if you're looking for data structures, try to traverse the Java API doc. If you are referring to anything in JavaScript, HTML, try to browse through the Mozilla document network. Like going through a W3 school is a red flag for interviewers. Yes, that's another aspect to look into. Soft skills, they are given preference. For example, at the end of every interview, they would ask you if you have any questions for them. Even if you are totally like the company, even if you have done all your homework, you have absolutely no questions, please do ask questions to the interviewer, because that shows that that gives you an opportunity to show that you have done your homework. At the same time, that shows that you're still interested. When you show that you do not have any questions, even though he's asking for it, it shows that you're either not interested and simply want to finish the conversation then and there. Use visual examples. As a front-end developer, it is to your advantage to please use the front-end technologies to show what you can create. You should be able to. Your GitHub should have enough repos, should have enough examples that, while conversation, you can simply share your Git repo and they can refer to how you write code, and which will make it easier for you to get hired. CSS skills are on the lower end of the priority. The reason is you have the basic CSS skills, but advancements in CSS skills would help you to improve performance. The reason is because if the JavaScript thread is occupied for animations and all that, it would affect your performance in other actions. So CSS, animations are given preference over JavaScript animation, but like I mentioned, it's on the lower end of the priority. And finally, technology is relevant to the role. It's usually if you look at a job description, there will be at least 15 different technologies listed. Java, C#, for backend Java, C#, Ruby, Python, XYZ. For frontend, they'll write React, Vue, Angular. They'll list at least 5 different frameworks. What you have to understand is that they are just trying to market it out to all of those people who have at least one technology out of them. So if you're good at the basics of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and one React framework, please don't feel shy to apply for the jobs that are, if you're good at React framework, please don't feel shy to apply for Angular and Vue. And similarly, if you are good at Angular, please don't feel shy to apply for React and Vue, because now that you have a good foundation and thorough understanding of JavaScript, you can pick up those frameworks very easily. They are just different in the way that they are written. Ultimately, under the hood, they have the same result. And yeah, thank you. Thanks for patiently listening through it. And yeah, I'll give it back to Sujay, and we'll open the floor for questions.
Oh, thank you, Sultan. That was amazing. That's got a lot of insight for, especially for someone who's starting off. First of all, I want to thank you for taking your time, your free time, to talk to us about how to become a front-end engineer and what kind of things that you had to go to, because I'm pretty sure there's people here who could relate to the frustration of tutorial hell, and it was good value there. So right now, I just want to open up the floor. So if anybody have any questions, if you could raise your hand, I could unmute you through Zoom, or you want to type it in the meeting chat. Yeah, so I'll just leave it up to the floor for a little bit. I know I do have some questions, but I was going to open up to the floor for now. If anybody have anything to, if somebody's going through this process, if they have any questions or concerns on this topic. Just raise your hand, or just say something on. So Mary asks, what kind of projects should newbies focus on? Any advice on that end?
So the question arises, like, how much of a newbie are you? Do you have enough experience with, I mean, when I say experience, like, have you created enough projects in the basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then pick up one framework and try to clone, an existing website, let's say a Twitter or Netflix. There are tutorials available, like, they last for a few hours, but like, when you have created a few projects in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, the basics of it, and, creating a clock and so on, you would have the patience to run through a 2 to 3 hour tutorial. So let's say if you're creating a clone for Netflix, that's, there are many YouTubers who have, put it out in the open source, creating a Netflix clone. So these kind of projects, there are two reasons that you should pursue it. One is that it improves your confidence that you are able to create a real world example. Second thing is, a lot of recruiters are not technical, but they would be able to identify a visual appealing project. So visually appealing project. So you would be able to market yourself easily on your resume, on LinkedIn, so on and so forth, and you would get the recruiters, eye easily. So these, yeah, I mean, could you elaborate if I've answered your question, and if you'd like me to elaborate on anything?
Okay. So I have Samari. Let me ask her to unmute, so she has a question. So, go ahead.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi. Go ahead.
Hi. Right. So I was a developer. I took a break. Actually, I was a junior web developer, and I had a career break, and I'm trying to return back to the industry. And I did start with freeCodeCamp, but I felt it was too much of a hand-holding sort of website. So I decided to go on the Odin project a bit, and I worked on the HTML, CSS bit. When it comes to JavaScript, I don't know whether I can actually mention, is it Vespos, JavaScript 30?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was wondering, I've actually just started working on them. Would you recommend going through a tutorial before tackling the project, or should I just continue with the projects?
I mean, see, when you're completing that project, like, be it any tutorial, like I mentioned, the clock, I was able to break it down into 3 or 4 aspects. One is the creating a circle in JavaScript, like how do you shape objects, in CSS, and then how do you create straight lines in CSS, then how do you position those objects, and then finally, how do you add animation. So make notes. I mean, even if you're following a tutorial, that's fine, but make notes as to what is the new thing that you have learned in that particular tutorial from the previous one. There is you should be able to break it down, instead of simply following up the tutorial and typing. what they are typing and, just going ahead with that. You should be able to like break down what they have taught in that particular project. And if you will be able to like reuse it in other projects. So, I mean, it's totally fine if you're following a tutorial, just make sure that you're making notes. And I understand like freeCodeCamp is totally overwhelming. That's why I mentioned only those few challenges, which are like, very, what do you call, spoon feeding, but at the same time, it's good for a beginner. But if you already have some dabbling with HTML, CSS, and the JavaScript, you would have to like create those projects on your own. Try to and just find out as what's the missing link. Like if when I was trying to create that clock project, I didn't understand like how do I draw a straight line. I was aware as to how to draw a circle, but a straight line. So that's an additional, what do you call, that's an additional information or knowledge that I've gained. So just try to break down those challenges into smaller aspects which can be reused in other projects. That is what will help you out.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Awesome. Something I was reading down the chat. So Heather says, I'm currently a back-end development bootcamp and learning a ton from square one. I'm a music teacher by trade. Do you recommend front-end bootcamp to follow this, or could I accomplish the same thing by simply following these three options?
I mean, I have a strong opinion against tutorials. So similarly, like bootcamps. Bootcamps, I mean, they work just like these free resources work. They will give you some basics, and then they will throw an assignment at you, and you would have to discuss with your teammates, add what do you call, new things to your knowledge, and figure it out on your own. So I say if you're ultimately major part of your learning is by figuring it out on your own, then why not simply figure it out on your own in the beginning and save yourself the hassle of going to a boot camp, following a structure. Going to a class, following their structure. Just start with simple projects, and the more, see, the knowledge of this front end development career is like so vast. Like the CSS mastery book is in fine print, and it's still is larger than some of the major what do you call, texts of and brands, what do you call, I think it's the Atlas Shrugged and all that. So they are pretty dense information which you'll not be able to get it immediately. So there's a reason everybody refers to Stack Overflow, everybody refers to document, because they will not be able to get all that knowledge. But so ultimately you have to figure it out, that knowledge on your own, and try to refer to official documentations. Like if you're creating, if you're adding style to something, try to look into how to draw a circle, and then try to find those keywords and try to search it on Mozilla Document Network. So that's how, by linking yourself with the official documentation, is what improves your skills and allows you to find the right solution to the problem that you're looking for. I mean, that's my opinion.
Awesome. Then Mary also asked, how do you keep yourself accountable through the learning journey? Like, that was what I was going to ask you too. How many hours do you spend besides work, besides school? How many personal time do you have with code, and what is the good amount? Do you have a set schedule? 6 p.m. I'm going to go study data structures, or how would you navigate? How do you keep yourself accountable?
I mean, unless I am interviewing at some firm or something, I wouldn't. I'm a family man. I have a hard time, keeping up with things out of my work schedule. However, what you could make sure is that you are trying to pick up as much difficult work. If once you are at job, you try to pick up as much as difficult work as possible. When I say difficult, it should be an upgrade from what you have been working previously. There's no point in doing the same thing, creating the same components again and again. It's time to move on to more challenging aspects of it, and that's what will keep you upgraded. At the same time, for your casual reading, Medium, or just pick one platform. There's again no point in following a bunch of 15 different platforms. Just pick up one platform and follow it through, like a Medium or freeCodeCamp articles, and just keep on reading them. It's quite possible that occasionally, every few days you would learn a new thing, and then that's one extra point added in your arsenal. So that's what I would do. And how do you keep yourself motivated? Well, at that time I really needed a job, so that's what kept me motivated. There might be other reasons for use. I mean, if front-end development might make you feel fulfilling. So, I mean, it's just the aspect of seeing your work in action that will keep you daily motivated. Like, just I mean, make a plan and say that, like, today I would be adding this feature to this small project that I would be working on. Just seeing that in action, like, the first time I coded my, stopwatch, it was very, I felt very happy because I was able to, replicate what I could see on an Apple stopwatch on my screen. So yeah, that's what motivated me to, go further into it.
Awesome. How about like hosting? Is there a specific for a front-end engineer, do you just put it in GitHub or do you also want the person to, because I heard this story where, at least for the recruiter, they will like to see the web page on site working and everything, right?
Yes, I mean, it's very easy. As beginners, like I mentioned, don't get into Webpack, don't get into deployment. All you have to do is just create the web page. StackBlitz has the option of, showing your web page. So just add that, add that in preview mode and just paste it in the repo. Keep your GitHub repositories public once they are completed. Even if they are not completed, just simply keep them public. Once you have enough repos under which you could pick up a few of them. Let's say you have 24 repositories and you would like to show 5 of them, then star them and put it onto your profile. Keep yourself as transparent as possible. Unless you're working on proprietary code, all these challenges and anything, especially as a beginner, should be shown to the world, should be accessible to any person visiting your profile. It is basically your social footprint, your code footprint on the internet. So yeah, make great use of it. Like, learn GitHub and try to push your code, and your previews can be easily generated using StackBlitz or Code Sandbox, and any person can simply see it. The other option is to use Netlify, in which you can simply drag and drop your code. There's no deployment procedure, nothing, and it's freely available.
Awesome. And I had a question. Do you have to Hubble status codes? Or do you have to remember all the status codes, set at 200, all the HTML? Does it come up in reviews, or is that something I should have?
Like I mentioned, okay, yeah. So it's there are so many codes, it's impossible for any developer to keep track of it. The question is, can you instantly identify it? Like a 200 is always okay. I mean, it's great. A 400 is some some problem with the response. So anything under 400 has different codes that you can always refer. Like, nobody would ask you, like, what a certain code means, but a 4 followed with any number is usually an error with the response. Whereas 5 with any error is usually the server has been reached, but the server has been reached, but it has not authenticated you or something like that. So you have you have supersets of these errors, so error codes, and that is what an interviewer looks into. Like, the baseline is, would you be able to navigate yourself in this software world by yourself without troubling another senior engineer?
Gotcha. Awesome. That's great advice. Awesome. Does anybody have any other main questions? We're almost like 3 minutes to 1 o'clock. Not. So I'm just trying to scan through here. Apparently, there's some things beginners need to understand to become professional programmers. Clean code. You mentioned debugging. Are there tips you can provide that will be good for us to learn or consider when it comes to professionalism?
Surely, like, just like how you could not become a good author without, like, reading enough books. It's best if you, like, occasionally, or like, as a daily habit, read other people's code. So 2 suggestions in this regard. One is, like, read the top, answered questions on Stack Overflow for whatever technology that you're working on. That would allow you to understand, like, how do you communicate a problem? Like, the biggest problem that I think, like, as freshers or as junior developers we might face is that we are not able to communicate the problem. We'll say that, this page is not loading, or this thing is not working. So in Stack Overflow, where it's not possible to simply get on a call with another engineer, how do you present your problem? By reading a lot of those questions, you will be able to present your problem well. Second thing is, like, you could look into let's say you're looking into a functionality called debounce. Debounce function is under Lodash. just look into how load, I mean, all this is like open source. So just look into how Lodash has written its debound script. There is like, an isEmpty, what you call function under Lodash, which will allow you to check if an object is empty or not. Just check as to how they have written it, and first write it yourself and then check how they have written it. And that way you'll understand as to how your code can be improved. I mean, this is an advice which, to be honest, I myself have a hard time following, but it's important for you to read a lot of code before you, I mean, not before you write. I mean, simultaneously you should be writing code, but read a lot of code that will improve your writing skills as well.
Gotcha. Cool. I think it's 1 o'clock, so I think I'm going to end it there unless somebody has one question. Oh, let me see here. Let me just pick one here. Just one more question, and then we'll just end it there. I think Mary wrote, I heard on another YouTube tech channel from Google engineer that we should not include soft skills on resume because the waste are very scarce space where we could be emphasized technical skills. Is that true?
I mean, what soft skills would you present on your resume? Like, soft skills are seen in the interview. So he's right there. Like, don't mention it on your resume. Like, what would you mention on your resume? Like, you speak well to your teammates. You're polite to others. So I was about to come to this resume part. Like, while we are at it, I would tell it, like, I'll just say it off. So about like, you lose like 20-25% of your space on your resume, just mentioning your college degrees, your name, your details, so on. So you have like only like 70% of your page. I mean, please go with a one-page resume. Don't send in pages and pages of resume. So you're just left with 70% of the page, and then there's borders and everything. So try to get in as much information as possible. When I say information as possible, make sure you follow the STAR approach, which is like situation, task, action, and then result. So follow this convention and try to get in as much technical information as much as possible on the resume. That is what will get you hired. Soft skills will be tested when the HR speaks to you on the screening call.
Awesome. Okay, that's great. Great. I want to thank you. It's like 1 o'clock, 1:01. I want to thank you again, taking your free time and come and talk to us and kind of guide us to how you became a front-end engineer and kind of tips and tricks that you went through. So I just want to thank you so much for coming and taking your free time. So I just want to give you a good applause. Thank you so much. Thanks for everyone becoming. So I'm going to grab this video and I'm going to post it on YouTube when I get a chance. And then Sultan, you said you're going to share your PowerPoints, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll share it.
Okay.
This.
Yeah, I'll get a link on that when I'll send it. I'll put it on the Dropbox or something to share it so everybody could have some kind of insight on that. So thank you so much for coming. I hope you have a great Saturday. So, and take care. So thanks so much.
Thank you all. Thank you for joining me. Yeah, see you later.
See you guys. Have a great Saturday. It's sunny here in Maryland. I don't know where you guys are at. Take advantage of the weather.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.